The mountains of Colorado can look peaceful. Endless forests, fresh air, silence. But sometimes the silence hides something far darker. On October 14, 2015, a young couple disappeared deep inside the San Juan National Forest. For an entire year, no one knew what had happened to them. And when one of them finally returned, the truth turned out to be far more terrifying than anyone expected. That morning began like any other hiking trip. 25-year-old Ralph Allen and his girlfriend, 24-year-old Elise Hill, stopped at an outdoor equipment store in Durango. Security cameras later showed them calmly buying gas canisters for a portable stove and a few energy bars. According to the cashier, they seemed relaxed. They joked about the cold nights in the mountains and checked their gear list. Nothing about their behavior suggested fear. At 8:25 a.m., they left the store, climbed into their dark blue Subaru Outback, and drove north along Highway 550, a dangerous mountain road locals call the $1 Million Highway. That was the last confirmed sighting of them together. The couple had told family members they planned a 3-day trip near Mullis Pass, an area known for dramatic views and rugged wilderness. But their real goal was something else. Ralph had been researching abandoned silver mines hidden deep inside the forest. According to online forums, some of the entrances were still accessible. Curious and adventurous, the couple planned to leave the official trails and explore. 3 days later, they were supposed to return. They never did. By the evening of October 17th, Elise's parents were growing worried. Both phones were silent. Just before midnight, the family contacted local authorities. The next morning, search teams began combing the mountains. Only a few hours later, police located the couple's Subaru in a small gravel parking lot near Little Molasses Lake. The vehicle was locked. Inside were empty water bottles, food wrappers, and a store receipt from October 14th. But Ralph and Elise were gone. There were no signs of struggle, no broken glass, no obvious clues. It looked as if the couple had simply walked into the forest and vanished. A massive search operation followed. Rangers from the U.S. Forest Service, volunteers and sheriff deputies spent days combing the surrounding wilderness. The terrain around Mullis Pass is brutal. Steep slopes, thick forest, deep ravines, and rocky cliffs. At night, temperatures dropped below freezing. Search dogs eventually picked up a scent trail leading west from the parking lot. For a moment, hope returned, but 2 miles later, the trail vanished on a large field of loose granite rock. On such surfaces, scent disappears. After that point, there was nothing. No footprints, no clothing, no campfire remains, just silent forest. A week later, the first snow fell. Within days, every possible trace was buried under a thin white blanket. After 2 weeks of searching more than 40 square miles, authorities made the difficult decision to suspend the operation. The official theory suggested an accident. Perhaps the couple had fallen into a ravine. Maybe they had been attacked by a mountain lion or bear. But no evidence ever supported any of those explanations. Slowly, the case faded from headlines. Their photos remained on missing person posters for a while, until the mountain sun bleached the paper. For most people, the story became just another tragic mystery of the wilderness, but the forest had not finished telling its story yet. Exactly 1 year and 9 days later, something happened that shocked the entire state of Colorado. On October 23, 2016, a small gas station in the town of Silverton was nearly empty. The mountain town sits more than 9,000 feet above sea level, and by late October, most tourists are already gone. At around 9 p.m., the night cashier heard a strange scratching sound at the door. When it finally opened, the man who walked inside barely looked human. He was barefoot. His feet were cut and covered in dried blood and dirt. His clothes hung from his body in dirty, torn rags. His beard was thick and tangled, and his hair looked as if it had not been washed in months. But what shocked witnesses the most were his eyes. They looked empty. The man staggered forward, grabbed a display shelf to keep himself from collapsing, and slowly fell to his knees. The cashier rushed toward him with a bottle of water. When he asked if the man needed help, the stranger lifted his head and whispered something barely audible. "I'm Ralph Allen." Within minutes, police and paramedics were on their way. The man who had disappeared in the mountains more than a year earlier had suddenly returned. But he wasn't the only discovery that day. Around the same time, 3 hunters were moving through dense forest about 15 miles away. The area was known for abandoned mining shafts and unstable ground, so very few people visited it. While scanning a ravine through binoculars, one of the hunters noticed a bright blue object among the rocks. Curious, they climbed down the slope. What they found at the bottom changed everything. Lying beneath an overhanging rock was a damaged hiking backpack. Nearby, scattered across the ground, were human bones. Animals had clearly disturbed the remains over time. Next to the skull lay a small digital camera. When investigators later checked the memory card, it contained dozens of photos of a smiling young woman standing in front of autumn mountains. It was Elise Hill. 2 events, the same day. Ralph alive, Elise dead. And the distance between those locations was more than 15 miles of rugged mountain terrain. Something about the story didn't make sense. When doctors examined Ralph at the hospital, they discovered disturbing details. His body showed signs of long-term starvation. But there were also bruises, burns, and scars from old injuries. Most disturbing were deep marks around his wrists and ankles, marks consistent with shackles. Even stranger, his skin was extremely pale. Someone who had spent a year surviving outdoors should have weathered, sun-exposed skin. Instead, Ralph looked like someone who had been kept underground. When detectives questioned him, Ralph claimed that Elise had fallen into a ravine during their hike and died from her injuries days later. He said grief drove him into isolation, wandering the wilderness for nearly a year. But forensic evidence told a different story. Analysis of Elise's remains showed that she had not died in October 2015. She had survived for months after the disappearance, possibly until early 2016, which meant one thing. Someone had been keeping them alive somewhere, and whoever that person was had kept them hidden for almost a year. The truth finally emerged during a late-night conversation between Ralph and investigators. He whispered a name. The Pitman. According to Ralph, the couple never reached the mines they were searching for. Instead, a man approached them on the trail, pretending to help with directions. Moments later, everything went dark. When they woke up, they were underground, deep inside an abandoned mine. The man had built a hidden bunker inside the tunnels. There, he kept them locked in a cage made of steel bars. For months. Elise eventually tried to escape. The man killed her with a hammer. Then, almost a year later, he released Ralph, but not out of mercy. As a warning, using Ralph's information, police eventually located the underground complex hidden inside an old ventilation shaft. Inside, they found generators, supplies, and a small cage where the victims had been held. But before investigators could collect most of the evidence, the killer triggered explosives that collapsed the mine. He had been watching them, and he had prepared an escape. Days later, police tracked the suspect to a remote property. His name was Arthur Vance. When officers attempted to arrest him, he opened fire. After a short gunfight, he was killed. Inside his home, investigators found something chilling: a collection of personal items belonging to missing hikers and campers. Photographs taken secretly in the woods. at least 12 victims, spanning nearly a decade. Ralph Allen was the only one who had ever come back alive. Even today, people who hike through the San Juan Mountains sometimes remember the case, because the forests of Colorado are vast, and sometimes the scariest thing out there isn't the wilderness, it's the people hiding inside it.